certainly from a department's point of view, it's incredibly important, not only that we have the Bunscoil, but that Manx culture and Manx Gaelic is taught at as many schools as possible, hopefully all schools, and we can use that resource to put that message out. But also in terms of a nation, particularly with what we've been through the last couple of months, that self-resilience, that belief in yourself has to be based on your culture. And having a vibrant, living Manx language is a really important part of that.
Are links to nationalism or patriotism inextricable, do you think, or do you see those separately?
I think nationalism and patriotism are slightly different and can have slightly different nuances about them. Some good, some bad. If used by the wrong people, really, and we've seen that. I don't see any problem with being patriotic about the Isle of Man. I also believe that we do have a real national identity here as well, that needs to be appreciated and cherished. As I said, particularly when we're going through very difficult times, when nations seem to be drawing apart and becoming more insular. Actually, there now is a time to perhaps unite the Celtic nations and show the commonality in terms of language, in terms of culture that we have with lots of other jurisdictions around us.
I'm sure some of the ideas about this move will be welcomed by many people who have a vested interest in it, maybe people who share the values and the objectives of the Bunscoil, perhaps. What would you say to the people who perhaps aren't so interested in this?
It's a really valuable resource for the island, because above and beyond Manx Gaelic, we know that those young people who are brought up in a multilingual environment, it can really enhance their ability to learn. And at a time when we've seen in other jurisdictions pulling back from teaching what are seen as foreign languages, this isn't a foreign language, this is our native language. Actually, an appreciation of the value of teaching different languages is important. We know that young minds develop in a slightly different way when they're speaking various different tongues. And actually, it can enhance that creativity. So I'd like to see what happens at the Bunscoil being really cherished, not only in terms of cultural but also the educational aspects of it, and for people to think about the value of learning other languages, but particularly Manx Gaelic.
In my lifetime, there's been a significant trend of decrease in second language learning, should we call it, maybe, if not foreign language learning in schools. Yeah. Is that something, talking more broadly now, away from the Bunscoil, the department's looking to address, to reverse? Is there work on that?
Absolutely. Again, curriculums sometimes change and the emphasis on those curriculums change. And we've seen that in terms of languages. I grew up with options such as French and German. Now people are learning Spanish and Italian. There's a lot bigger range of languages that people can learn. And some people don't quite see the relevance of learning another language. They think it's just the holidays. What the Bunscoil has shown is that by immersing people in another language, you can actually increase educational attainment. You can broaden people's minds in ways that we wouldn't necessarily attribute to just going on a course or learning different languages. It does broaden your outlook and opens your minds to other possibilities. And I think certainly as we develop the curriculum on the back of the new education bill, we should be looking at the way we teach language in all our schools, Manx Gaelic, but also other European languages and world languages. And we've seen that already in terms of Chinese and Japanese. Because actually, if you can get people's enthusiasm, not just about other languages, but other cultures, you can actually broaden people's horizons and actually open up possibilities for their further development in really interesting ways.
Is that development plotted and measured by the department? And if so, how?
Not really. We measure attainment through exams and tests. Actually, in terms of understanding and embracing languages, that can be difficult to test. What we do know, though, is lots of young people on the Isle of Man are really quite passionate about learning languages. And often they'll start off with one and end up with two or three. They'll really get the bug of learning different languages, learning different cultures, learning about different countries. And if we can actually expand that and really cherish that for what it is, rather than just exam grades, I think that will help create a much more rounded education service for all our people.
I'm reluctant to talk too much about attainment or about league tables or anything like that. That's a whole different discussion, of course, and there are many advocates of those kind of ideas on the island. But there are still, I would say, a lot of people who are sceptical, cynical, critical of some of the things that go on at the Bunscoil and maybe of language learning more generally, would quantitative data and proof of what it would do to people allay some fears, do you think?
It would, but again, the thing with the Bunscoil is it teaches the full curriculum. It happens to be in Manx Gaelic. It's a normal school, but actually, and unless you know Manx Gaelic, you might be a bit lost at the back of the class to begin with, but you'll learn quickly. It's a very, very good school. It provides excellent teaching, but above and beyond that, it actually provides teaching in Manx Gaelic. And in terms of attainment and testing those pupils, I know from experience, meeting them later on in life, when they go into other schools that are taught mainly in English, those young people have got a slightly different outlook because of the foundations they've learned at the Bunscoil.
And we do have an awful lot of those people now. Of course, we've mentioned it was established 19 years ago, so you've had several cohorts of young people who have progressed through. How about the provision when it comes to secondary school? Is that something that's being looked at? Is the department aware of perhaps what happens next to the Manx language at that stage?
I think that's a very good question. We do have that progression to go on and do A-levels in Manx Gaelic and do further studies in terms of Manx culture. But people aren't necessarily encouraged to do that or directed into it. It's a personal passion that makes people go forward. I think you're quite right that in the future, as we look to expand aspects of the curriculum and expand the range of opportunities for young people to learn, then having options of Manx Gaelic and Manx culture are very important. At the same time, there's lots of other things such as learning French or Japanese or Chinese are important to actually appreciate it for what we have on our island.
You're talking about taking Manx as a subject really at secondary school, which is what's available now. We don't have immersion education in Manx Gaelic at secondary level. Is that something you could ever foresee? Is that just too far away?
I think you'd need that passion that actually founded the Bunscoil in the first place, and it's very hard to create that. I think it needs to happen organically. But what I've seen certainly over the last couple of years is people becoming much more passionate about Manx culture, particularly Manx dance and Manx music, putting that on the world stage. And I'd hope that on the back of that, people would get far more involved in the Manx language. And certainly pupils in secondary schools, if they wanted to start up a Manx language club, in the same way as they start up folk groups, to actually perpetuate that and develop that further, I'd be very supportive of that.